With the family growing like it had, there was always some activity going on. Both the two oldest great-grandsons had graduated high school. D.L. had gone to work as a plumbing journeyman, and Levi was working in Colorado. He actually had two children now, Mason and Halo, by his girlfriend Helen Berner, and they were living there together, and we went there for their wedding. That was an interesting time, and that was also, I mentioned Joseph's graduation from college in 2007 and Michael's from high school. And so the family was moving on, and Joe actually met a nice girl from Boerne, Texas, in college. Her name was Sarah Graves, and she was introduced to him by his roommate. And they began dating some. And he went home with her to meet her family once. And that was an interesting story. Mr. Graves said, so you're from Waco, to Joseph. And he said, well, actually, grew up in a little small town near Waco called Lorena, but you probably never heard of it. And the mother spoke up and said, oh, yes, I've heard of Lorena because I worked at the Lorena Methodist daycare while my husband was in college in Waco. And Joseph said, well, I went to the Lorena Methodist daycare because my mother was a nurse and she was working. And then he said, so you went to college in Waco, I guess Baylor? And Mr. Graves said, no, actually I went to TSTI. And Joseph said, well, my granddad was a teacher at TSTI. And Mr. Graves said, what department? And he said, building construction programs. And Mr. Graves said, I was in building construction. And he looked at Joseph and he said, your grandpa? And he said, yes, he was program chairman of it. Are you Mr. Babb's grandson? And he said, yes, I am. Well, that made Joseph a special person because they both began to talk about how they both admired Ted Babb Sr. And Joseph became a part of their family and Sarah a part of ours. When they married in May of the next year, she graduated college with a special ed degree in teaching, and Joseph and her married 1 week later in a little venue in Helotes, Texas. A very nice wedding. Well, that wasn't all that went on. Taylor graduated from high school, and she had been a student at Houston HSPVA, which is Houston School for the Performing and Visual Arts, and she was a dance and vocal major, and actually put on some interesting programs that I attended. And she got a scholarship to Ouachita Baptist College in Arkansas. And Gladys and I went to see her perform a couple of times, and I think there's a newspaper article with her dancing with a partner there in one of their performances. Taylor was a beautiful girl, and her graduation pictures and prom pictures show that. Gwen had now had her fourth child, a little girl named Paige. And it wasn't long before she met another man named Reggie Palmer, because she had been divorced from Chad Gilstrap. And they got married, and Reggie became a part of our family, and he brought along two girls from his former life, Abby and Maggie Palmer. And that made their family complete with 3 boys and 3 girls. And added to Levi's 2 children, not only did we now have 9 grandchildren, but we also had 8 great-grandchildren. No, 6. 6 grandchildren. Things weren't always pleasant. With a family, there's always some other things that go on. And when Catherine was born, she was having trouble with her back. Her back was not straight. She had severe scoliosis. And by the time she was 4, she had to be in a back brace and wore that for the next 3 to 4 years, which resulted in her getting a lot of teasing at school and upsetting her greatly. But by the time she was approaching 8 to 10 years old, she had back surgery, and they placed a titanium rod in her back to keep the curve from getting worse. Because of that, she had to be homeschooled for a year. And with Angela and Brad both working, then I went to Houston and stayed with Catherine at home. And she had every day a certain amount of walking to do and exercises to take to strengthen her back after the surgery. So I stayed there for that. And she got better and went back to public school. And when she was in Cook Middle School in the Cy-Fair district, she had a great voice and was singing in the choir. And I got to go to hear her sing, her group sing at the state convention of Texas Music Teachers Association in San Antonio. And that was a nice trip. And then when David was 17 years old, junior at Jersey Village in Cy-Fair High School, he began complaining with his back hurting. David was lifting weights as a junior in PE class, and they thought maybe it was muscle cramps and that sort of thing. But it got worse, and he kept complaining, so Angela got him an appointment with the same doctor that had done Catherine's surgery. And he did some tests, including an MRI. Imagine their shock when the results came back on David's 17th birthday that he had stage 4 lymphoma cancer. Well, that changed things for him. His whole senior year of school was under cancer treatment. He had 15 months of chemotherapy before he finally rang the bell that he was cancer-free. Because of that, he had to be homeschooled, and there was a school rule that as a 17-year-old boy, a woman teacher could not come in the house unless somebody else was there. So I went to Houston and stayed for that year while the teacher came in to give him his lessons each day, and I would answer the door and be there. David was a sick boy, but he persevered on with his studies, and by the time the second semester of his year came, he was able to go with a mask on for 2 hours in the afternoon to do his chemistry lab so that he could graduate with his class, which he did. And then he tells Angela he's planning to go to college to the police academy. And she said, "David, we got you out of cancer and now you're going into a dangerous profession like that?" He said, "Mom, I've been given a lot and now I need to give back, so I'm going to be a policeman." He had grown up a lot that year with his illness, and he did go to police academy at Lone Star College in the Houston area and graduated I was able to see that. And now after these years, he has the rank of sergeant as a deputy sheriff in Harris County, Texas. Well, everything was not just for family. I was busy with lots of things. With the Lorena Women's Club, they had made me reporter, and because I was doing the veterans reports and the library reports, and then they asked me to do the yearbooks, which meant that every year we picked a theme, and I helped produce the yearbook. For the year of 2008, we chose the theme Celebrating Our Freedoms. And along with that, we decided, the Lorena Women's Club, to do something for the veterans of our community in November. So we had the first annual Salute to Veterans, and we held it at the Masonic Lodge and had a lunch and a program. The first program we did was like a review of dances, and Gladys came down from Burleson once a week and helped teach the ladies of our club that wanted to be in it how to dance certain routines to patriotic music. And I was busy not only practicing the dances, but making vests for all of us, red and white striped vests to wear as part of our costumes. And so we put that program on, and it was very well received. We had a lot of veterans there, not only from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, but some from Desert Storm and the problems in Bosnia and things that had happened. And that gave me an idea for another article. And I talked with the people at the Lorena Leader, and they thought it would be great to do a column on individual veterans' service. And so I interviewed them one at a time, and I began with a man named Dwayne Russell, who had been the first person who carried in the flag of our first veterans program that we had. He was a colonel in the Air Force and had a great story. And before the next year, veteran time came, I had already interviewed and written articles about 8 more local veterans and what had happened with them and their experiences and their families afterwards. As we approached the second year of 2009 for the second Veterans thing, we decided to do a program honoring veterans from every American war. And that was beginning with the Revolutionary and moving on up to modern time. And we had a different person in costume for every event and sang songs that went along with each of those wars. And that was well received. Doug Wiedemeyer, who was a drama teacher at Lorena High School, came and was the MC for it, introducing all of the different people. And my son-in-law, Stefan, came in his uniform to represent the soldiers from Desert Storm. And there's a picture of him. So that was interesting. And then I wrote some more articles, and I was running out of local people, so I decided to do something about my own family. And I wrote one about my brother-in-law, D.L., remembering him, D.L. Babb, and his exploits that he had talked about in World War II. And then I wrote another one about the Babb brothers, which was Ted and Bob, my husband and his brother, who were both servicemen during the Korean conflict. And those articles were taking a lot of my time, but I was also still working in the library and quilting, doing other things. And about that time, the Waco McLennan County retired teachers asked me to take another job for the next 2 years. And that was to be second vice president of the unit. And their job was to run the book program for the year. In the state of Texas, the retired teachers gather books to be given to the different schools, and then the children get to pick those and take them home and have their own book to read at home. The first year of that, then, we gathered 400 books and delivered them to Waco, 3 of Waco's schools. Then the second year, we gathered about the same number of books and delivered those to 3 of the county schools nearby. A fun thing happened in that when I was introducing the books and all and talking to the children at McGregor, afterwards, one of the teachers came with this little girl holding her hand, and she said, "This little child insists that you're her grandmother." And I looked down at her because it'd been a room of 3 kids all bunched together. And I said, "Well, Maggie, yes, she is." It was Maggie Palmer, Reggie's little girl, and she was a kindergartner. And she recognized me, but I had not seen her out in the group. And so we gave each other a hug, and that was a very nice thing. It was like fun that I wasn't even thinking about Maggie being in school there when I delivered the books. But that was interesting. Our 3rd annual Veterans Program in 2010 was sometimes said is probably the best one we ever gave. And of course, we thought it was great. I had gotten the idea that from watching one of the road shows on TV of Bob Hope and Bing Crosby and talking about going on a USO trip, that we would do a road show for the USO at our next program, and the ladies liked the idea. And to make it authentic, we would not use any songs except those that were either written during World War II or before World War II. And so that made the program a little more challenging. The choir director at my church was a young man named Chris Diamond, and he had a great voice. And our youth director, Trent Futrell, also had a nice voice. And so I asked them if they would come and be Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. And they agreed. And I wrote the script for the whole program. And then they began talking about going on the road again and a road show to USO. And they were bringing along the Andrews sisters. And that became all members of the Daniel family for the entertainers. Gladys, my sister, Elisha, my daughter, and I played the Andrews sisters, singing the song of Boogie Boogie Bugle Boy. And at the end of it, our brother Dwayne, who was a trumpeter, came in with his trumpet and started playing a jazz rendition of Boogie Boogie Bugle Boy. And he was then introduced as Harry James. And he gave another solo performance of Stardust, which was one of the most famous songs and well-loved of the 30s and up through World War II. And he introduced his the next actress, which was Betty Grable, who was portrayed by our baby sister, Linda Daniel. And she announced that Betty Grable was not only the pinup girl of World War II, but she could sing as well. The trick was to pick a song that fit you. And so she sang Accentuate the Positive. And she had on shorts and showed her legs. That was a fun time, and several people came up and said, "What a fun program. I think that's the best we've had so far." Well, we continued that for several years, and that was great. But not only did we do that, but we got involved in Christmas programs as well. After the first year of veterans programs, we had done the one called Christmas on Broadway, and that involved doing it in the church for my Sunday school class Christmas party, and also doing it again in Burleson at the AARP, and where Jerry Babb, our nephew, even came along and sang. And that was like songs that were famous on Broadway through the different Christmas shows, and songs from, My Fair Lady, Wouldn't It Be Loverly, and I Could Have Danced All Night, from South Pacific, songs like Nothing Like a Dame, and Honey Bun, and even Gladys sang a song of Honey to Santa Baby, which was from one of the Rockette shows. And that was well received. And we used local people in Burleson for some of the actors when we did that at the ARP. The next year they asked us to come back for another Christmas show. And so we did. And Gladys said, "We're nearly famous." And we laughed about that statement. And because our Uncle Lawrence Young, who was a character, had always said he wanted us to sing at the reunions, and we would sing, and he would comment, "Your dad missed the boat. Y'all could have been as famous as the Andrews sisters." And another time we sang, and he said, "Your dad missed the boat on you girls. You could have been as famous as the Lennon sisters." And another time he said, "You girls could have been as famous as the McGraw sisters." And then the last time that he was there and we sang, whatever we sang, he said, "I've always said your dad missed the boat on you girls with your voices, because you could have been as famous as the Dixie Chicks." So we got a big laugh out of that. But Uncle Lawrence appreciated our singing. Well, we did even do a couple of gospel concerts, one that was done after Katrina, which brought money for the Methodist Church in Crowley to donate to Katrina, and one that was done in a Methodist church in Fort Worth for a fundraiser for their youth program. And that was brought by one of the cousins on the Bell family that had heard us sing. And so we enjoyed that, and Jane Penner would go along as our pianist. She was a wonderful piano player and a great friend all my life. She could play any song you wanted in any key you needed, and so it was great to have her. Well, the family was growing and growing, and lots of things were coming up. And I was also, besides my club work and my women's club and teachers and all, I was getting very involved in church activities. And that will be my next episode.